G'day, coaches. In the pressure of a game, in the highest tension moment, what do you do to make sure that you make your best decisions? I think this is one of the most interesting parts about watching March Madness. It's March right now, and the first weekend of March Madness is wrapping up between the men's and the women's basketball tournaments in college basketball, and it has been absolutely riveting 4 or 5 days of watching basketball. And what's really interesting about that for us as coaches is there are so many of these moments where coaches can influence the game. And the question for the coaches, when they look at it afterwards, did they act in the right way? Did they send a message that not only could be received, but could be acted on? And when we as coaches start to think about those different things, we realize that the tension of the game, the crowd going one way, the referee making a decision here, players maybe getting too many fouls or getting into foul trouble. All of these things start to create a different pressure. And the idea that you should win, or maybe you shouldn't win, right? Those are all things that start to play into the pressure of the situation. And in those moments, I think it's really important that we're able to perform at our best. And I think the best way to do this is to have a ritual that you use in those specific moments. And you have to practice it, right? Because there's this idea that we think might work, but we're not actually sure whether it's going to work. So one of those things that I like to do, especially in those moments, is to be able to take a step back. I like to engage in conversations of how we want to create influence, and I want to see what lands with the people that I'm talking to. Normally, those people are going to be my assistant coaches. Maybe those people will be a player who's going to go into the game or playing the same position as someone that is on the field. And for me in rugby, I like to have those conversations running the whole time. Why do I do that? Well, my ritual is to be in the game. And what I want to try and do is get a feel for where the game is ebbing and flowing, and for the areas where we might be able to tweak different levers to allow us to perform even better. And that's sort of my goal as a coach during a match, right? It isn't to make a game-changing call. It isn't to flip the momentum on its head. It's to be able to give information to the players, call things in, and allow them to do what they do best, and that's to play the game. And I think one of those things is, in basketball, you have a timeout. In rugby, we don't really have timeouts. Yes, there's a water break if it's really hot, but even that isn't really a timeout per se. The players are absolutely breathing hard and they're just trying to get liquids on board. But in basketball, you do have this timeout, and it's really interesting watching how different coaches manage this time. Some allow all the water to come on board, the circle to be formed up. They walk away, and then they come back with their whiteboard or their clipboard or whatever it happens to be, and then they start talking. And there's some very famous examples from the NBA of the reason to do this. That's to allow the chatter to die down, all those things to happen, and then you get all eyes on you. There are other coaches that like to make a substitution if a player gets in foul trouble and they start coming off the court. They have a quick word with them. That's their way to check in, and maybe that player just walks in, sits down, grabs a towel, towels off, and maybe that's their routine to flush it, to be honest with you, and then they get put back into the game. But there's all these different tools that coaches are using. And the question that I wonder is, are they being used intentionally? Is it just something that's happened? Because as the tension gets bigger, as the moment gets bigger, it's really important that we keep doing the things that have gotten us to that moment. But we can only do those things if we're being intentional about those things. And so for me, I like to think about the rituals that I like to have. For me, I like to have a little bit of a conversation where I'm going back and forwards with questions and answers with an assistant coach. That's my ritual. When there has to be a big decision made. And normally for rugby, this is a decision about whether we're going to make a substitution. Are we going to move something up? Is the game going according to plan, not according to plan? Because we always come into a game with a predetermined plan, right? And are we just following through and executing that plan? Or has something happened? Is there an injury? Is the swing of the game not going our way? Is the referee not calling certain things? And in that situation, we might have to make a decision. Normally that's with a sub, but sometimes that's with a message. And I like to be in the flow of the game. I'm feeling the flow of the game. Is this an appropriate time to send it? But before I send that message, I take a step back. And it's not a physical step back because that seems a little weird. And I've tried doing that And it sort of puts my assistant coaches ill at ease. And so what I tend to do is take a deep breath. I actually look at my toes, which I've seen video of myself and now feel a little weird doing it, but I do it anyway because that's the thing. I take a deep breath in. I think about the first half of the sentence, then I make eye contact, and then I start speaking. And for me, that's my little ritual that I use when I need it to be able to perform my best as a coach in a given situation. And I think this is one of the things that we have to play with. Sometimes we've got to do it at training. Sometimes we have to create noise for ourselves. We need to do this in a moment where everyone is talking to us. And at other times, we then need to test it in a game and come back to it and go, well, this didn't work, or this did, or something happened, or I wasn't really sure. And in that moment, we make our tweaks. Sorry, not in that moment. After that moment has passed and we reflect on it, then we make our tweaks and we test it again. And the whole goal here is that we're really looking to develop the ability to perform our best under the pressure of a game. And the pressure that I'm most concerned with is the ability to make clear decisions in a shortened period of time. I think that's really hard as a rugby coach. I think it's really hard in team sports like football or lacrosse, rugby, soccer, because where we send a message, it needs to be taken in, it needs to be processed before it can be used. That means we need to get the timing right and we need to send it to the right person. And that's one of the big things that I'm trying to do is this the right time? Am I staying in sync with where my players are going? Are my game drivers, what are they feeling like? What's their body language like? What am I seeing out of them? Because if I'm seeing poor body language, I might not want to send them a message because it's a pointless message. They can't interpret it. They can't use it. Maybe I just need to send them an affirmation or keep going, right? Just depending on what I'm seeing. But if I am going to send that message, I normally have practiced sending that message to a couple of different people. And I've practiced sending it in a few different ways. Honestly, I've probably practiced yelling it at them because I'm a bit of a yeller. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but it's what I do. And I'm trying to be better about it. And I think my players would say I've gotten better about it over the years. But sometimes I say it quietly. Sometimes it's a word coming in. Sometimes it's a phrase. Sometimes it's a phrase that triggers a specific type of action, or sometimes it's a shift. But I need to be looking at, hey, can the player who the message is being sent to take in that message? Can they process it? And then can they act on it? And if I'm doing that, then I increase my chance of success. I increase the chance of not only making the call that's right, but the call that's right being acted on. And I think those are two very different things. So for me as a coach, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to think about, what I'm trying to do on that sideline is make sure that the information that I give the players, that the body language that I give the players, that the signals that I give the players, they're all helping to add to their decision-making and action so they can perform the best they can. And it comes down to that same thing with me all the time. I have to have a ritual because there are times where I have lost my cool. I have been yelled at by my players to shut up. I have been losing my cool at a referee. I'm not going to lie. I am the first person to tell you that I am an emotional person, and sometimes I just get it wrong. And in those moments, any information that I'm sending is not going to be heard, and I need that ritual to find my calmness again. And my little ritual is to go for a bit of a walk and a bit of a wander, right? And I actually have a habit of putting in an AirPod. It's really interesting. I was going to put in the AirPod now, but then I realized I might mess up the audio for this. But I normally put in an AirPod, and often it's Jack Johnson or something that's a really mellow tune where I know all the words of it, because then I will start singing along. Have that song queued up in my pocket at all times, because that's one of the things that allows me to sort of take a step back from the situation, to not be so enveloped in the emotions that I'm feeling, to be able to take a step back. Oh yeah, it's a physical thing. I've put an AirPod in. Does it look a little weird? Okay, whatever. But does it help me then start to connect back to the moment, connect into what I need to do? And so I use some calm. Calm is probably the wrong term because sometimes it's just whatever I've been listening to, right? When I was in Kaohsiung with the Philippine national team, it was Sunday Candy. That was a song that my family and I had been singing on the car ride while going camping right before the trip, and it was one that was stuck in my head. And I knew that if I was going under pressure, if I went there and I was singing its really upbeat song, that I was going to come back and I was going to be able to act more like me. And so when we think about it, let's make sure that as coaches, we're putting our best foot forward during the pressure of the match, that we're sending messages to someone who can receive it, process it, and act on it. And let's make sure that we're sending the message that we believe will create clarity and efficacy in the performance of it. Let me know how you do it for yourself. I'd love to find out. Drop it in the comments, and I'll be back next week with another one.